more robust interactive session. And I want to welcome the 4 panelists who will be giving us or sharing with us the ideas on this topic, data visualization. I welcome you once again. Now I would like to pass the floor to Omotola Abidemi, who will moderate the webinar on data visualization. Thank you all for your attention and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers and participants of NIQS free webinar on data visualization, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. She is a distinguished quantity surveyor and the first female professor of Northern Nigeria of quantity surveying in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. QS Professor Kulomri Jipato Adogbu is a fellow of NIQS and a research quantity surveyor in Nigeria. Honorable Professor, please, you have the floor, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Moderator Omotola Abidemi. So the paper, give me a minute now, let me just put up this slide. Yes, the topic before us at this first session is equality and sustainable development, the woman in the development space. I'd like to start by appreciating the chairman, QS Ajali Koko, for this privilege, and the DG who has been working tirelessly to see to the success of this webinar. The theme that we're looking at is data visualization, a look at SDGs using Microsoft Excel. However, if you're going to talk successfully about SDGs, you can't run away from the matter of equality and in particular gender equality. So what we'll be considering in this session is gender equality as it affects women against the backdrop of the SDGs. Now, there are 2 issues here, equality on the one hand, and then development on the other. And when you talk about equality, you can't run away from gender equality, gender equity. And development, of course, we're looking at is sustainable development. So gender equality, most of the time when we hear the word gender equality, the 2 words together, it creates the impression that you have a man and a woman and you put them on a scale. And you want to see if the scale balances out. More often than not, the woman is down there, illustrated in the picture, because she has the responsibilities of childbirth, childbearing, primary caregiver in the house, shopping and cooking, and somewhere in between, she has to go to school and get an education. Now, we understand gender. We know that it's about being male or female, and we know that it's about the attributes that characterize us, the roles that men and women play, and the expectations that society places upon them. We also understand the generic social and biological constructs that define gender. I know some of the issues are a bit controversial when you talk about gender dysphoria and so on, but primarily we're looking at the male or female, as it were. So gender equality really is when all genders, male or female, have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. Rights, responsibilities, opportunities. It's a fundamental human right as has been accepted and declared global. And if pursued by nations, by society, by institutions, gender equality has capacity to bring about the growth of the economy. It is good for the economy. It's good for preventing discrimination and violence against women and girls, makes our society safe. And so if as a nation or as a society, we do not seek to ensure gender equality in all that we do, then it is likely that we will lose out in the end. We will lose out on the benefits of having this resource. So talking about gender equity is about being fair. And if you want to be fair, it means you have to adopt strategies and measures that are available to compensate for women's historical and social disadvantages. You see, generally speaking, the women have not been in decision-making positions over time. And so to a very large extent, we've been marginalized, discriminated against. It's historical and it's a social disadvantage. And so if we want to be fair, it means that we have to get strategies and measures that would ensure that there is this balance of power, balance of access. So equity would lead to equality. Now, just a bit of a caution, when we talk about gender equality, it does not mean that men and women become the same, only that they have access to opportunities and life changes. And these opportunities are not constrained by nor dependent upon their sex. So this picture here illustrates for us equality versus equity. So in the first picture, you see three people on three little boxes. I know some of us have seen this image before. They are all being treated equally. However, you have to move beyond that to look at what is equitable. For these ones to be able to view the match, then you have the boxes lined up for them to suit their height. But in this third image, you see it pushes the boundaries of equity further to say, look, rather than just about sharing opportunities and rules, let's take away the barriers. Let's take away the systemic barriers that has made these people not to be able to enjoy the same privileges. This image also talks about equity and equality. However, in this case, it also includes the matter of inclusivity, taking care of people who are living with disabilities. So when you talk about gender equality, there's also the issue of inclusivity in it, because you cannot run away from the fact that, yes, there are women who are disadvantaged, but there are also women who are living with disabilities beyond just the issue of their gender. So we're talking SDGs data visualization. So why is gender concern important? Two basic reasons I give you here. I'm sure there are others, but firstly, that there are differences between the roles of men and women. And there are differences in the way that we approach education and government and our responsibilities. And secondly, there has always been this systemic inequality between men and women. Men are underrepresented in decision-making processes which shape their society. And this pattern to a very large extent has limited our society, because women do not have access to the same kinds of opportunities. I know changes have come up over the years to address this. And this webinar is also one ongoing conversation to look at this issue of gender equality. Now, gender equality is linked to sustainable development. You can't run away from them, and it's vital to the realization of human rights. So when do you say that you have gender equality? First of all, 4 points there. That when men and women are able to share equally in the distribution of power and influence, when men have equal opportunities, men and women have equal opportunities for financial independence, whether through work, businesses, skills, or whatever it means, they have opportunities, equal opportunities for financial independence. You can say equality exists when men and women enjoy equal access to education and equal access to opportunities to develop their interests, their talents. You can talk about equality when men and women share responsibility for the home and for children. And they are free from coercion, for intimidation, or any kinds of gender-based violence. So what do we do? How do we move from here? The one thing that you hear about or you read about constantly when you in the topic in gender equality is gender mainstreaming, and that is where you integrate gender concerns in your analysis. Every analysis that you do, formulation of policies, you're coming up with aims and objectives for your organizations, you're coming up with targets that you want to achieve. You have to think about how gender concerns can be integrated into them. And this is one of the things that was well captured in the 17 SDGs, as highlighted earlier by the chairman of the foundation. There are 17 goals that the United Nations has articulated, and this framework has 248 targets, and of these 248 targets, 51 of them are gender specific. 51. That's a good number. And that shows the importance of them. And if you look at the 17 goals, there are 10 of them that have gender specific targets. Of the 17 goals, 10 of them have gender specific targets within them. But the emphasis for this session is gender equality. Unfortunately, reports by United Nations Women suggest that the world is not on track to achieve this gender equality by 2030. There are too many issues, so many challenges regarding women's rights, violence, the global health issues, climate, so many issues, women's representation in positions of power. And one of the major drawbacks they have found is that only 47% of data required to track progress on this particular goal are currently available. So if we're going to be able to achieve gender equality, it means that we'll have to do more when it comes to acquiring data. And it's not just enough to acquire data. The data has to be in such a manner that takes account of gender representation, so that women and girls are visible, they're taken care of. Now, we've been talking gender equality, women, women, women. Is gender equality a concern for men? And I say absolutely. The achievement of gender equality implies changes for both men and women. However, the emphasis is more on the women because historically, women are the ones that have been systematically been ignored over the years. Now, more equitable relationships will need to be based on a redefinition of the rights and responsibilities of women and men. I know we're talking gender equality, we're talking women should be empowered, women should be given equal access, but in a sense, women too will have to be ready to accept the fact that there may be some redefinition of rights and responsibilities. And the lives of men are strongly influenced by gender as those of women. So it affects everybody, including the men. So now the other side of the coin, development. When we talk about development, is the art or process of improving. It's a process of growth. You develop, you grow, physically speaking, from a baby to a child to an adult. You grow, you open a school, you start from one classroom, you go to the next classroom, and so on. You open the NIQS Foundation, just started. NIQS has been existing for 50 years, and before you know it is another 10, 20 years, and we grow, we develop. Now, sustainable development is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. So as a foundation, we are working to meet the needs of society. And one of the areas we have identified is that gender equality has to be on the table. We have to have conversation about it. How do we ensure that we promote the SDGs so that we have a society that is free of all kinds of discrimination, whether male or female? So we want to develop within the framework of the SDGs, the 17 SDGs, which gives us a roadmap for progress and ensures that no one is left behind, male, female, child, adult. So achieving gender equality and women's empowerment is integral to these goals. And only when we do this, then we have economies that work for everyone. That as a woman, you can go to school and graduate and be able to earn and get an income, or you'll be able to conduct your business or whatever it is that you feel the need, you feel that you can do. Whatever skills that you have that you can develop. You can develop your skills as a mechanic or as a tiler or as a mason. A woman should be able to have that liberty. Now, on the one hand, we may have the opportunity. Some would ask the question, even if you open the door wide and you leave it open, how many women will be willing to go into that? That's not the question. That's not the concern. The point is, let that access be there. Let that opportunity be there. Then as women, we talk to ourselves and we charge ourselves and challenge ourselves and look, we need to get beyond some of these barriers that have held us bound so that we can move into open doors and open opportunities. Yes, moving forward, SDGs and women, it's an ongoing conversation. And the report I mentioned earlier, the report by United Nations Women shows that new data and analysis, they show how women are faring across the world. It's just that unfortunately, there's not sufficient data available to give us a true picture. So the UN Women Executive Director, Sima Bahas, made a statement that it's not just a goal in its own right, it's the key and bedrock to the SDGs as a whole. And so that suggests to you that it is a very critical and important issue. So if you keep takeaways from this session, first of all, information, data and information. The world as we know it is shrinking. There's so much data literally at the tip of our fingers that has collapsed the borders of nations. The interaction across borders, across nations is collapsing. There are many things that are changing. So this collapse of borders, this available data is allowing us to interact real time. We know what is happening across states and nations. And so we need to find a way of harnessing this data and this information. One strategy perhaps that we can adopt either as an institution, NIQS Foundation, the government, is to develop gender statistics training curriculum and have it available online so that people know how to generate useful data that can help in developing policies. We've seen it in education where admission is often based on it's based on performance primarily, but even at that, there's a gender component that's introduced to give room to allow for a good representation by a female. That's what I mean by having statistics that can help us to take proper decisions. Second key takeaway is that we need to be deliberate about promoting gender equality. The SDGs are a global development agenda. All over the world, the roles of women have evolved. It's not business as usual. Women are governing nations, women are leading organizations and associations. Women are working in fields that were previously not popular for them. So things are changing and there are societies that are still lagging behind. But for us, this webinar is one attempt to be deliberate about promoting gender equality. And we need to do this everywhere. So first of all, information. Secondly, information. And secondly, we have to be deliberate. The third takeaway for this session is that we have to have the changes and decisions that are data driven. And by that, I mean, okay, women are underrepresented, women are discriminated again. Oh no, we will not agree. That's just sentiment. If we have statistics that we can show, numbers, empirical evidence that can demonstrate the need for change in some policy or the other, then that would sell. People would accept it better. If you want change to be easily acceptable, you can demonstrate that with empirical data. And that's why we need sex disaggregated data so that our decisions will be data driven and they will help with our policies, whether it's policy for, the compositions of boards. You can decide that, okay, for board, you should 5 male and 5 female. I know some will ask, so where are the female? No, you put the system in place. In 5 years, in 10 years, some of the changes that we make, some of the policies that we come up with now will become more pronounced, more effective. We don't have to wait until it's all perfect. Let's put the framework on ground. So information and data-driven decision making that will help us with policies that are based on empirical evidence, not sentiments. Oh, women are underrepresented, let's have more women. And we'll have to be deliberate about talking about gender equality. Women are a critical piece on the chessboard of society to drive the nation towards attainment of SDGs. And if any society ignores this resource, women that is, it only hampers its growth. This is in some nations, half of the nation, women, and you ignore that huge human resource, it is to the detriment of the nation. So as critical as a critical resource for attainment of the SDGs, we must be able to, present our story in a compelling way that leads to change and that leads to decision, which is data-driven, which is, one of the things that we're doing here. We're looking at data visualization. And so we don't want to take decisions just based on sentiment. We want to take decisions that are based on empirical evidence so that we're able to sell, whatever change that we want to bring about. So, okay, so I have a few resources here. I'm sure the organizers will send the material out. Do well to read it. The last point there, the last article, Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, will give you a snapshot of where we are in the attainment of gender equality. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for your time, and I look forward to interacting more with you in this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Adogo. We appreciate you. This has been a very, very wonderful and insightful presentation. Thank you so much for speaking.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma. Thank you so much, ma. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be calling on our next panelist. Our speaker, Dr. Ayo Arowolo, is a lead partner and co-founder of Data Lead Africa. He will be making his presentation right now. Dr. Ayo, thank you so much for coming. You have the floor, please. Ladies and gentlemen, while we're waiting for Dr. Ayo, please kindly turn on your cameras so we can actually take a picture of the webinar going live. Thank you. This will just take a minute, please. Yeah, Engineer Franklin, we can see you. Thank you very much. Dr. Ayo, please turn on your camera. Omotola Abidemi, please turn on your camera. Take pictures. Okay. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. We've taken a quick snapshot. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, Abidemi, thank you. We can see you. Yeah, started. Yeah, Dr. Ayo, we can't hear you, please. Did you mute him? Check if you muted him. Check if you muted him. No, it's okay. Dr. Ayo, please unmute yourself, please. He's unmuted. He's unmuted. He's unmuted. Dr. Ayo, we can't hear you. Hello, Dr. Ayo. I've been calling him, yes. He said he's talking. It was Hello, Dr. Ayo, can you hear us, please? Dr. Ayo. Say he just signed in. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a little bit of technical issues from our end. Mr. Franklin, can you hear me? Engineer Franklin. While we're waiting for Dr. Ayo to set up his system, please, Engineer Franklin, we humbly request you take over the floor, please. Engineer Franklin. What is wrong with these people? That's what I'm doing.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Engineer Franklin, thank you so much. While Dr. Ayo is trying to set up, can you make your presentation, please? Ladies and gentlemen, Engineer Franklin is a data architect and the lead operations manager for Data Lead Africa, and he'll be making his presentation on data visualization using Microsoft Excel. Engineer Franklin, please, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Uzo. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you can see my screen, let me know.
Not yet. Yes, we can see your screen, please. You have the floor.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sorry about this. Okay, I'll be presenting on data visualization, a look at sustainable development using Excel. So we all know the importance of visuals to human. We are all wired to easily assimilate visuals instead of having figures and words. Visuals easily stick to every one of us. So before I start, I'll just go through the definition, some of the definitions of data visualization. So data visualization is the graphical representation of information or data using visual elements such as graph, charts, maps, pictures, and other elements. So visuals give you an insight into your data set. Mere looking at visuals, you just get the full idea of what your data is trying to paint to you, instead of just seeing numbers and text. So visuals just give you an insight into whatever that's being presented to you. Visualization is just a way of telling stories. We all know the SDG goals. Without visuals, you can't give a better story to every data you collect. So visuals are very, very key in presenting the progress in the SDG goals. So from what you can see in this slide, you have different visuals. We have a lot of tools out there aside Excel that can help you easily tell your story using visuals. So some of them include Power BI, Tableau, and others, but today we're looking into Excel. So before you go into visualization, there are 4 key questions you need to ask yourself. The first one is what is important to show? We know how cumbersome data can be. You are not expected to show everything in your data set. So you need to make sure you highlight the important element in your data to show. Another key question you need to answer is, what do I want to emphasize? Even if you're showing some variables in your data, which of them is important for you to emphasize? So another thing is, what option do I have to display my visual? Like I said before, we have a lot of visual tools, just like the previous slide. From here, we have a lot of visuals. I can see pie charts, column charts, line graph, and the rest. It's not every data you use a line chart for.
Engineer
It's
Franklin.
not, yeah.
Yeah, please, kindly share your screen in full, please.
Okay.
Our participants
Is it better now?
Thank you so much. Yes, it's much better.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, like I said, it's not every data you can use a pie chart for. It's not every data you can use a column chart for. Neither can you use line chart for all data. So you need to be particular about what option is available for you to display your data set. While going through this slide, I'll give you the different type of data charts to use when you're doing some certain visualization. And I think that is in the next slide. So the last question you need to ask is, which option is most effective in telling my story? Which option is most effective in communicating the information in your data set? So this presentation is going to be divided into two sections. We have the theory and the practical. We'll go into practical after this slide. So this slide shows us the different things you can do with your visuals. We can present visuals in four basic ways. The first is comparison. If you're comparing data sets, different variables in your data set, you have sets of visuals to use. If you're also showing distribution in your data set, you also have some visuals to use. Is composition, showing composition, how your data sets come up to form a whole. We have different data as well, different charts to show that. We also have for relationship. If you want to check the relationship of two or more variables in your data set, we have some charts to use as well. So hold on, let me close this. There are varieties of approaches to data visualization, especially with quantitative data. However, to make it easier to interpret, in this case, the use of data visualization can be classified into these various components. You have the comparison, which I mentioned earlier, relational, distribution, composition, tracking targets, and showing location. This location, if you remember during the outbreak of COVID-19, they were showing us the spread of various, the spread across various cities using one key visual, which is heat map. I'm sure we all remember, where you have different colorings from different locations, showing you the degree, the extent to which COVID spread across states. So that is also a kind of visuals, and we use map to show that as well. There's something like this. We have different heat map we can use. The thematic heat map. We have the bubble heat map. I'm sure we're all familiar with this first one. This is the thematic heat map that shows you location per spread. So each coloring indicates how severe the spread of a particular disease is, or the spread of a particular thing, depending on what you're looking out for. So these are some of the visuals we can create. This can be done also in Excel. So a lot of people underplay the importance of Excel. Excel is a very is a dear tool to me in particular. I can use Excel for so many things, including visualization. So we'll look at some of the best practices in data visualization. The first one is emphasis. You need to show most important data. I mentioned it before. orientation of your data. Orientation of your data. This is speaking about making your data set legible, making your visuals legible for others to understand. Then we also have organization, how you organize your chart, your table for easy understanding. So I was told I'm a little bit fast. So it's because of the time I was given, because like I said, this session will be divided into two, the theory and the practical. So it's not all about talking. We're also going to practicalize what we've done. And in the practical, we need a lot of time, which we don't have at the moment. So pardon me if I'm a bit fast, but I'll try as much as possible to slow down my speed. Okay. All right. I'll move over to another best practice. There are some things you need to avoid while visualizing your data. One thing is you do not overload your chart. Yeah, I know we want to show a lot of information in our charts, but it's okay to leave it simple. Don't overload your chart with information, too much information. If not, you get your audience bored, you get them confused the more. So we need to avoid overloading our charts. And you also need to limit the number of colors and shapes in your charts. Why I'm saying this, I know a lot of people like mixing colors together. So if you have too much color in your visuals, it's in a way sends the wrong signal. People might just see it as just you doing a color charade or some sort of thing. So you need to limit the number of colors. You can use some like a shade of a particular color to represent your visuals. So another thing is also to show information through text. One of these is showing information using title, headers, and the rest. So I'm just going to run you through this slide. So it's still talking about best practice. I'm going to share this slide with us, so you get the full picture of it, because I may not walk you down bit by bit because of time constraints. So these are also some of the ways you can visualize your charts and also maintaining the best practices in your visualization. So with this talking about clarity, it's talking about sorting your data, it's talking about showing importance in your data set. So I'll just go straight into visualization, the practical aspect of it. A data set was sent to every one of us. Mr. Uzo, have you shared the link or shared the data with the participants?
Yes, Engineer Franklin, the data set has been sent via email to all the registered participants, and I believe everyone has downloaded a copy of it. But Engineer Franklin, please, you can go ahead and just work your magic regarding this data set, please. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Okay. So I believe everyone is connecting via, we're all connecting via our laptop. So if you are, just go straight into your Excel and download the data set. So I'm just going to open my data set. Since we're talking about SDG, I just picked a particular section of it, which is around climate. I believe we all have this data. So if you have it, just open up the data set in your Excel.
We'll okay, we're following you, Engineer Franklin. Go ahead.
We'll just do some basic visualization in Excel. So as we all know, Excel has different tabs on it. One of the tab we have on Excel is called Insert tab.
Engineer Franklin,
tab.
please, you're not
Yeah.
sharing your Excel screen, please.
I'm not sharing it, sorry.
Yeah, we're still seeing your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, while we're waiting for Engineer Franklin to get his, okay, it's up. Okay, Engineer Franklin, go ahead. Thank you very much. You're sharing your screen. Please make your screen full so that everyone, okay, we can see it clearly.
Is it full?
Yes, Engineer Franklin, you have the floor.
All right. So this data set is talking about climate. If you can look through this data, you see the state, the locality, house destroyed, houses damaged, household affected, people affected in 2019, people affected in 2020, down to 2021. These on the flood affected sheets. We have about 4 spreadsheets on this workbook. So in visualizing your data on Excel, you go to a tab called Insert tab. That's, if you look up here after the file, the home, you see the Insert tab. Once you click on the Insert tab, you see a ribbon drop down. The first item we have on the Insert tab is the pivot table. We also have illustrations, we have add-ins, we have a section for charts where you can access different charts on Excel. So because this is a very large data set, we use a particular tool on Excel called pivot table. So I'm saying pivot table. So we use pivot table to break this data into a smaller bit. So a pivot table is a function on Excel that help you to summarize a complex data set. We're going to summarize this data set into different bits before we create visuals on it. It's also a form of visualization. So to create this pivot table, you just click somewhere on this data set and click on the pivot table. I believe we're all doing this because it's a practical phase of this training. So you click on pivot table and it will bring up this dialog box for you. So the dialog box is for you to indicate the range of the table where you want this table to cover, this pivot table to cover. By default, the software will highlight the particular range for you. If it's okay with you, you just go ahead. Going down, you see an option to create this pivot table on a new worksheet or on the existing worksheet. So it's always advisable for clarity, to create it on a new worksheet so you don't have everything in one place. So you just leave it at new worksheet and click OK. So when you click that, you see a new worksheet open to you. I created this before. It's still the same thing we have on sheet 1. So because I want you to understand this, that's what I'm going over again. So you have a new worksheet created for you, which is a pivot table worksheet. So in this pivot table, you have the pivot table field. If you look at this section, it's showing you the different column we have on that data set. The first column, we have the states, the locality, the houses destroyed, houses damaged, household affected, and the rest. Like I said, this data is talking about climate and it's speaking to flood affected areas in a particular location. So if I go back to this raw data, you can see the header here. All these headers are what you can find in this location. Okay, so the pivot table field, has 4 important fields. 4 important fields. We have the first field, which is filter. Filter is just helping you sieve out your data based on a given criteria. We have the column. The column is where you drop any of these variables you want to analyze. If I want to analyze the states, let's say I want to analyze the state, I'll just drag state from here and drop it on the column. So you see what it has done. Going back to my table, it brought out the state on the column. I can as well drag the state to row. So depending on how you want to present this, you just do a drag and drop stuff there. So one thing about this column and row is that you can interchange them. Whatever you have on this state can also be done on the column field. So the last field we have is the value field. Value field houses the data set with numbers. So looking at this data, we have a lot of field with numbers. For example, the house is destroyed. Probably I want to show the house is destroyed according to state. So I can drop this because it contains different sets of numbers down to this last one. Okay, so going back to this pivot table, I can easily drag and drop these guys here. So let me use states and probably houses damage across states. So if I drag this down to that particular field, you can see the summary of that particular data set. Houses destroyed, it's not some, you can change this. Looking at this value field is giving us sum. You can do a value field setting. Instead of having a sum, you get a count. So I can change this to count and say, okay. So instead of giving me sum, I'm having count because we're not talking about sum in this case. We are treating each occurrence. We're treating per occurrence. Is this clear? So let me walk you through this pivot table. So the first
Engineer Franklin, we're following you. Go ahead. It's clear.
Okay, the first state here is ABAPCA, and it's showing us that the count of houses destroyed in this state is just 1. Al Jazeera, it's showing us 8 houses destroyed. So with this summary, it's easy for me to plot a chart. It's easy for me to plot a chart from here instead of plotting it from this complex data. You know, SDG data are very, very complex. In fact, before I could get this particular data, it took me a lot of time. So you can easily plot a chart from here. That's why we needed to summarize this table. So having this summary, it's easy for us to plot charts from here. So how do we plot a chart using this particular table we've gotten? To plot a chart from a pivot table, sorry, let me just drag this away.
Go ahead, Engineer Franklin, we're following you.
I'm trying to move the strawberry. All right, so to plot a chart on a pivot table, you just click somewhere on that particular pivot table. And if you look up on the tab section, you'll see a new tab appearing called Pivot Table Analyze. So when you click on it, it will open up different ribbon on this tab. It will open up different ribbon on this tab. So the first, if you look down to your right, you see a tab, a ribbon called the tool. The tool. Under the tool, you have pivot chart. You have pivot chart. If you click on the pivot chart, it will open up this dialog for you to select the particular chart you want to use. So by default, it's giving me a clustered column chart, meaning it recognizes that I can use this chart for whatever I want to show here. Aside from clustered column, I can select the particular chart I want if that's not what I want to use. For example, I might want to use bar chart for this information. So if I click on bar chart and I say OK, it brings out the chart for me. So this is how to create a chart from a pivot table. Now, you are not done with this chart, even if it's giving us this chart. The next thing is for us to format this chart. So in formatting this chart, the first thing I want to do is probably change the header because it's showing me total. The header of this chart could be number of houses destroyed per state. You understand? Because the variables we're working on is the state and the count of houses destroyed. So I can easily come here and change the header of this. Number of houses destroyed per state. Okay, so I mentioned during the presentation that it's a good practice for us to show information. So without this information here, you don't know what the chart is talking about, right? So it's always good to show information, and in showing information, we can use header to show information. Aside this, I can as well bring the figures on these different bars. So for example, I want to know the total number of houses destroyed in White Nile. We don't know the number except we trace it down. What if I just want the numbers to be by the end of the bar? So how do we do that? We just come to this plus sign, click on it, and select data label. So in selecting data label, we can see the various number of houses destroyed across the state in that by using data label, right? So these two informations, these figures down and the ones by the bar, they are quite the same. So it's just like you duplicating information. If you have this here, it's okay to delete this particular number line down. So you have the figures appearing here instead of down the chart. So this is one chart we can create using our pivot table as a summary table. So aside this, we can also create other visuals. By creating visuals, we go back to the source data we used and create a different pivot table out of it. You can create a new pivot table here because once you drag anything, it overwrites whatever information that was there before. So going back to this same table, we create another pivot table out of this. Remember how to create pivot tables. So to do that, again, you go to where Insert tab. On your Insert tab, the first thing there, the first icon there is pivot table. So you select your pivot table. Same thing we've been doing over. You just click on OK, and it will create a new pivot table for you. Now let's use another variable. Unfortunately, we have just two variables here that we can drag to either the column and the row. Still using this particular state. on the row. I want to know the total houses or the total people affected in these states in 2019. Okay, 2019, 2020. You see where I'm dragging these values, these figures, the columns with values. I'm dragging them under the value ribbon. So 2020, 2021, and 2019, they are all going straight into the value field. So you have this summary of your entire data set in this table. So we know that in 2019, there was no house destroyed or people were not affected in ABI PCA because there are no values there. Same thing as 2021. So this just gives us the overview of our data sets across the 3 years we are looking at. So same thing we did before, we can as well show this using charts. The whole aim of this training is to show you how to build visuals from a data set. So after summarizing this, you just go back to the pivot table analyzer and pick out charts from it. So since they've given us this option, we can select that and say, okay. So this is a particular chart that was given to us. This is a clustered column chart. It's showing you across states. And the good thing about this is it also brought out a legend for us. We know that the blue here now indicates the affected people in 2019 down to 2020. So we know that from here, this particular state has the highest number of people affected, and the figure was recorded in 2020. So you see how easy it is for us to assess this using charts. Going back to this data set, you can't easily tell because of how cumbersome the data is, but using charts alone, just at a glance, you know what the data set is trying to tell you. So this, the importance of building visuals, using visuals to represent your data set. I think we have other table here. So let me check this. All right, I have a different table on the state-wise summary. This is a summarized data set. And by the side here, there is a smaller table here showing you, let me bring this to the center. So this table is showing us the year and probably the number of houses destroyed, I think. So we have the year from 2013, and we also have number of houses destroyed. Okay, so there's a particular chart I want to introduce us. It's called the line graph. The line graph is, yeah.
Okay.
Is someone speaking?
No, go ahead, Mr. Engineer Franklin. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, line graph is a chart we use to show data when there is a time factor in it. For example, I have the year. The year is a time variable. I also have the number of states. So because of this, I might likely want to use the line graph because line graph shows you the trend across different year, shows you from what is happening in 2013 down to 2020. So to plot a line graph, because this is a very summarized table, we don't need to create a pivot table because it won't make sense creating a pivot table from a table as small as this. I said pivot table is used to summarize a complex data set. So this is not complex. You can build our chart straight from this table. So to get your line graph, you just highlight the table you want to use and go to your Insert tab. On your Insert tab, you have the Charts ribbon. So for me to select a line graph, there are a lot of graphs here. So to get all the charts available, just click on Recommended and say All Charts. So we have all the charts available on Excel. You can see line chart here. So line chart is the chart I want to use. Because of the time factor in this data set, I'll pick line graph. So once I click OK, it brings out these charts. No. Okay. Sorry, this is not the chart I want to use. So going back to the Insert tab. Okay, I think this is perfect. All right, so I have this line graph here showing us number of houses destroyed across the years from 2013 down to 2021. You can see the trend now, how this is happening. From 2013 to 2015, there was a reduction in the number of houses destroyed. Then in 2016, it picked up again and reduced in 2017. So the peak of this destruction happened around 2020. It happened around 2020. And if I should import the value here, if I should import the value from the data label, you can see that the total houses destroyed in 2020 was 885,480 houses destroyed in 2020. So this, using the line graph, it helps you easily show trend. Once there is a time factor in it, it helps you show trend. Line graph is best used when there is a time factor. I told you that it's not every chart you use for a particular data set. You need to know what you want to show. In this case, we're showing trend of the houses destroyed. That's why line graph is most useful type of chart for this particular information. Mr. Ozo, how many minutes do I have left?
Engineer Franklin, you have 5 more minutes.
5? All right, thank you very much. So let's see if we can build other charts with these 5 minutes. Visualization, it's very broad. You need a lot of time to tell stories. So I'm just trying to see how I can make good use of this time given. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. I want to just quickly take us through this. We won't have enough time to build more graphs. So to use this 5 minutes properly, let's just go through some of the things I had to leave out.
Engineer Franklin, please make your screen full.
Yeah. Going back to the best practice, we'll just pick them one after the other. The best practice here, format your charts to make them easier to understand and more aesthetically pleasing. So we use colors in formatting charts from what you can see. Color can give your chart more meaning. You either use different colors or use it sequentially by using a single color with different variation. So we also have a divergent method using 2 colors to show the high and the low. So the midpoint is where the colors are faint. You understand? So another thing you can use is also legends, like we saw in the previous chart that was developed. You know that legend shows you what a particular color represents in your chart. For example, this yellow color, this yellow color shows support, while the maroon shows service, the blue shows product. So legend just help you easily describe whatever information is in your chart. We also have grid lines. For every chart, it comes with a grid line. You might want to remove the grid line, you might want to show it. If the grid line makes your charts look too busy, it's advisable to remove it, just leaving the chart plain. For example, I have two charts here, same chart, one with the grid line and another without. So whichever one appeals better you use. It's either you remove it or you leave it out. And also the axis labels too, they are quite important when showing visuals. These axis labels show you the numbers and also the variables you're using. So they are also quite important to show in your data set. They help you tell the story better. I spoke about clarity earlier on. Clarity, we can use chart title to show clarity, give information about what your chart is saying. And there's another key thing we need to note is the sorting. You can either represent your chart in a sorted manner, like this chart in the middle is sorted ascendingly. You can also sort it in descending order. Unlike this first one, this one was sorted alphabetically. So it's either you use the ascending order or the descending order, or you sort alphabetically, depending on what appeals better to you. We also have another best practice to show emphasis. In showing emphasis, we make use of colors in showing emphasis. In this chart here, the emphasis was laid on this particular column because it's the highest figure available, is the column with the highest figure, definitely in the data set. It was emphasized using a thicker shade of blue. So you use color to show emphasis. And also, we can also use line, a colored line as well, to show emphasis in your data set. Then, the last phase of data visualization is to share your findings. If you create visuals and you don't send it out for people to view, to gather information, it doesn't make sense. So whenever you're done with your visual, share it even across in your organization with your friends. Share your findings to people. You don't know who might likely be interested, who might make good use of that information you're sharing. So I'll stop here for today. Thank you very much for having me. It's been nice taking this section. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Engineer Franklin. You have really broadened our knowledge with regards to data visualization, and it's been an honor having you on this webinar. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable participants, distinguished quantity surveyors, hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Distinguished quantity surveyors, at this juncture, we'll be moving on to our third speaker and our third topic for the day. Dr. Ayo Arowolo is a distinguished data scientist, and he's the lead founder of Data Lead Africa. Engineer Ayo, please, you have the floor. Kindly make a presentation, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And I apologize for the initial technical glitch we had. Please give me feedback, Mr. Uzo, if my screen is visible and I can be heard.
Your screen is boldly visible and we can hear you, Dr. Ayo. You have the floor.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Yep. So it's been a very inspiring conversation, right? From Prof taking us through the gender nuances, the gender conversation, and then having Engineer Frank walking us through a bit of hands-on on visualization. And I'll say that visualization will require more than the 20 minutes view on how it's done. It's a whole complete module of study in data analytics where you learn visualization. But before me this morning is to speak on achieving the sustainable development goals through data analysis. Looking at the topic, the first thing that comes to my mind is through data analysis. And of course, I'll just be, why data analysis, why data? And we'll be looking at that as I flip through my slides. First, we have 17 sustainable development goals, which I'm sure we are all familiar with. And quite a number of them, just as Prof also made mention, gender is cross-cutting to almost all of them. But of specific interest to practitioners in quantity survey will be SDG goal number 11, building sustainable cities and communities. Will be SDG number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Will be SDG 13, things around climate action, SDG 6, things around clean water and sanitation. One thing that the SDG goals does for us is to focus how government plan and strategize for development. Because once development is not strategic, measuring becomes very difficult. And what the SDG goals gives to us is that measurable outlook where we can now measure development of a nation, development of a community, development of a people, development of an institution. And I'll start with a very broad overview of Nigeria as it plays within the SDG ranks. First, Nigeria currently, as of 2022, we're ranking 139 out of the 163 countries subscribing to the SDG goals. Our SDG index score is about 54.2, and then the spillover score is 98.8. I'll explain that. Of course, the first index rank is very clear. We are number 139. And early this year, I think that the government celebrated that because we moved about 5 points up. We used to be around 145 out of that number, but we've moved some points up. And in realizing the SDG goals, Nigeria rates about 54.2, meaning that there is still so much to be done that we have not yet done, but of course we've made some progress. The spillover score talks about how much the SDG intervention within a country is impacting positively on the people. So the spillover score kind of talks about that positive to negative impact on the people. And the much we've done in SDG, there has been considerable impact in the lives of the citizens. But let me lay a little bit background on achieving SDG goals using data analysis. First, the popular management guru that everybody quotes, Peter Drucker, once said that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That means if we can't measure the rate of change or the activities within the SDG space, then we can't manage it. We must be able to measure it. What's the growth we are having? What's the extent of change? What are we doing as regards gender? What are we doing as regarding building sustainable cities? Until we're able to measure it, then we can manage it. And to measure something, it requires that we're able to capture quality data, and then that we're able to translate this through proper analytic processes, applying statistics, applying analytic tools, and then using that to build a convincing and credible tool for measuring progress. So until we're able to get the data and then we're able to process the data, we can't measure effectively. So while it is very important for government and agencies involved in implementing the SDG to monitor and manage efficiently, citizens' participation in the actualization of the Sustainable Development Goal will enhance accountability, equity, and inclusivity. Hence, citizens need to have access to the data. So what am I talking about here? That even though governments and other non-governmental agencies, foundations like the NIQS Foundation, we're all contributing to be able to implement the SDG goals, okay? It's important that the implementing agencies, the government, the NGOs are able to efficiently monitor and manage. But for that to be done efficiently, citizens must be able to participate. And when we mean citizens should be able to participate, ordinary citizens in Nigeria should be able to know what the government is doing as it regards certain goals. For instance, what is the government of Nigeria doing as it regards building sustainable cities and communities? What are we doing as regarding urban migration and its effects on the housing utilities? You know, so if citizens have access to this data, they're able to engage government better. They're able to demand accountability. They're able to demand equity and inclusivity. But once we don't have access to this information, you don't even know what government is doing or not doing. And hence, and this is where data plays a very strategic role in civic engagement, which leads to government being able to deliver on their duty. Government can tick boxes and say, we've done this. But what's the data saying? Do we have access to data that points us to what government is doing per time? And this is where NIQS also comes in as an institute, as a foundation. How much of this data does our institute, does our foundation have access to be able to mobilize for advocacy, to be able to give citizens the right tool to be able to engage government? And that leads me to the concept of open data. Now, for us to be able to achieve sustainable development goal, we must have open data. Open data, we're saying that anyone can freely have access, can freely use, can freely reuse, can freely redistribute, you know, for whatever purpose they deem fit. People should be able to have access to data. And Nigeria is a signatory to the Open Governance Partnership, which invariably also comes with the open data, which mandates the governments that are in that partnership to make data available. Like now, how many houses do we have in Nigeria? What is the housing deficit in Nigeria? How many Nigerians are living in shanties and in slums? How many Nigerians have shelter for themselves? This data should be what every citizen should be able to have access to, so that to be able to demand for better governance, even accountability in the usage of resources. Okay, and so when I'll be talking of data now, I'll be talking the perspective of open data, that we should be able to have access to this information. Nigeria, when it signed this partnership with OGP, we opened what we call Nigeria has a database, our national database, where you are supposed to be able to go and you should be able to go and find any information you need about the development patterns of the country. I mean, so I should be able to go SDG goal 1. I should be able to go on the national database to see what the data is saying and what the country is doing. But fortunately, the last time I checked the database, I'm not sure it's not been updated for close to 7 years now that it's been left dormant, not updated. But open data gives citizens, gives foundations like NIQS, gives even the institute, NIQS itself, the opportunity to be able to engage government better. I try to look at one of the goals that I think will be helpful for that will be relevant to our conversation, which is goal 11. And goal 11 talks about building sustainable cities and communities. There are a number of indicators here that in the SDG we have all signed and outlined to be how we will measure if our country is developing well in terms of building sustainable communities. One, we said by 2030, we should be able to ensure that access for all persons to adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services, and to also upgrade slums. So by 2030, we want to say all Nigerians, no Nigerian should be homeless. By 2030, we want to say, we want to enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated and sustainable human settlement planning and management in all countries. So to Nigeria, that our urban communities are properly planned, you know, in a way that it allows for sustainable development and sustainable urbanization. There are some of the indicators under the sustainable cities that may not be directly relevant to people, practitioners in quantity surveying, but quite a number of the indicators here are what we should be thinking about. One of the indicators for goal 11 is talking about access to water, that people should be able to have access to water, access to good air quality, good waste management, access to public spaces, green and public spaces for women and children and older persons to be able to relax and unwind. And these green and public spaces should be accessible even for persons with disabilities. But we'll look at how far we've gone on this. Let's look at what the data is saying. There are a lot of, Nigeria don't really have a verifiable data in terms of our housing deficit. Is mostly assumptions and all of that. But currently, a number of organizations who have tried to do a survey had come up to say that the housing deficit in Nigeria currently stands at 28 million. That's huge in a country that we have an estimate of 200 million Nigerians, with 28 million not having shelter. That's quite, with a housing deficit of 28 million, that's quite huge on a country like ours. But like I said, this particular information is debatable because the data is not available, okay? But we will also see on some of the indicators on the UN platform, what they are talking about. That, for instance, we have a very huge urban population migration in Nigeria, which impact so much on their housing deficit. For instance, in 2021, we're seeing about 52%, or let's say about 53% of Nigerians live in the urban area, okay? Meaning that people are leaving the rural communities and they are coming to our city centers. People are coming to Lagos, to Abuja, to Port Harcourt, to Kaduna, and Kano. This has great impact on the housing utilities in the country. But we will only be able to engage government, engage non-governmental organizations if that data is available and if we're able to properly analyze this data. This is a data from the UN platform on the Sustainable Development Report. If you're interested in that report, the 2022 report is already out, which details down to 2021 in a way. The proportion of people of our urban population that lives in slums. So I've looked at those who have moved to the city center. So we've seen about 53% of Nigerians live in the city center. And you see, this has impact on agriculture. It also has impact on housing, you know. But when they come to this urban society, where do they live? When people come to Abuja, where do they live? When they move to Lagos, when they move to Kaduna's central, when they move to our city centers, where do they live? In Nigeria, 53% of urban population, they live in slums, in unplanned environment, you know, with no basic access to things like water, sometimes power not available. In Rwanda, only about 44% of their urban population lives in slum. I try to run a comparison with West Africa and another country in East Africa. In Ghana, only 29% of the population in their urban communities live in slums. This kind of information, when we are able to gather it and analyze it, helps citizens to be able to engage government better. Like the foundation, NIQS Foundation, will be able to engage government better and say, government, what are you doing about the population that lives in slums? But that's only possible when we have access to the data, and then we have the ability to analyze the data. One of the indicators under the sustainable cities talked about access to improved water source, and piped water. In Nigeria, only 12% of Nigeria have access to government provided water, piped water source. You know, most Nigerians produce their water themselves, will have to sink their own borehole. Because water is very essential and only 12% of this huge population of us has access to water, where does the rest persons get water from? So some have access just to unsafe water, and the ones who could get clean water have to sink their boreholes. This has impact on our environment. The more boreholes we are sinking here and there has grave impact on our environment. You know, but in Rwanda, 75% of the population have access to water source, which is piped. In Ghana, it's about 41%. Access to this data and being able to analyze it and produce this kind of insights allows citizens, it makes our institutes, it makes the NIQS Institute, it makes the NIQS Foundation able to better engage government and to lead citizens' engagement for development and to hold government properly accountable. I will just stop with this particular chart, then share a few thoughts, and that will be over from me. When we talk of these indicators, those who live in the urban society, we have what is called the Consumer Purchase Index. So the cost of housing, one of the things that is leading to people not being able to have, making people live in slums is the cost of housing. if you look at the cost of housing in Ghana vis-a-vis Nigeria, our cost of housing has been increasing sporadically. You can see from 2014 to 2016 to 2020 to 2021, we've been having a very steady, sharp increase in the what it costs to be able to house yourself, the cost, the burden of rentals, the cost of renting, and if you want to build, the cost for that. As against in Ghana, they also had the same thing from 2014 to about 2019. Then the government decided to do something drastically, because if you can't provide housing for the people, it's also a recipe for insecurity. You're having more people living in shanties, in slums, you know, in ungoverned, in ungoverned spaces, in places where security access is a bit difficult because it's an unplanned community. It has impact on security, which also inversely has impact on the economy. But in 2019, you can see how Ghana decided to do something differently about the cost, the burden, the CPI for housing utilities in their country, and there was a crash of a price, even though it is rising again, but not in the measure of what we have here. And I asked the question, what is Ghana doing differently that is leading to a decline in their CPI for housing utilities? The basic is, until we have the data, until we are able to analyze the data, we will not be able to produce insights that allow citizens to better engage government for accountability. Rather, we will just do more around just being citizens without being able to demand for good governance. So a few thoughts, and I'll just conclude here. Why we need open data? What I mean by why we need citizens to be able to have access to data. The data must be provided. The data must be generated. Government must do more in generating data. Civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, we must pay more attention to generating data. NIQS as a foundation, we must pay attention to generating data. Aside from this, we need more professionals who are skilled in mining the data and presenting it in a way that sparks citizens' participation. So NIQS Foundation, as a foundation, you share a data insight, for instance. Citizens are going to take that to be able to engage government, you know, but we need that skills. And I'm happy that you're starting this webinar with understanding visualization and much more. This should be taken deeper. Quantity surveyors should move beyond just the practice of surveying to understanding data and being able to analyze this data for effective citizen participation in their field. So when I talk of data analysis, I'm just talking that producing useful information. It's not the statistical jargons, it's not the plenty complex analytics. It's just being able to break down the data into what is usable for ordinary citizens. So to achieve the SDG, citizens, through data analysis, citizens must be able to interrogate policies and government initiatives. We won't be able to achieve the SDG if citizens are not actively participating, if civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations are not actively engaging government on policies and their initiatives. And this will only be possible when we have access to verifiable information. And I'll end with my recommendation. First, I think NIQS must intensify advocacy on the need for government to collect and make data on SDG readily available for citizens. For instance, when it has to do with housing, sustainable cities, building sustainable communities, where is the data? How can we get citizens to better participate and engage? So there must be advocacy for this data to be collected. this data to be, if that data has been collected, to be made public for people to have access to. And finally, there must be a conscious investment in training of quantity surveyors. Individually, quantity surveyors must pay attention to the emerging field of analytics. This is how we can efficiently engage in conversation, meaningful developmental conversations. So that skill is essential, and NIQS should invest in that training for her professionals. Thank you everyone for listening to me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo Arowolo, for an insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished quantity surveyors and participants, at this juncture, we'll be going over to the question and answer session, and we humbly recommend you turn on your cameras so that we can see you while you're asking your questions. Participants, please kindly open your cameras. Thank you so much. Dr. Ayo has actually responded to a question in his closing remarks to the question Abdullah Hisani asked, which he said, why is Nigeria not providing access to data? And Dr. Ayo actually gave a recommendation in that regard, that it's necessary that we do maximum advocacy in that regard to have this information available to the public. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your time for your questions. Please raise your questions. You can freely raise your hand. I already have one attendee that is raising their hand for a question. We have a question in the Q&A session. Okay, Abdullah, your question has been answered, please. Please unmute yourself so that you can ask your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, ask your questions, please. My mic is there. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, ask your questions, please. Okay, we're receiving a round of opinions and expressions and comments, and they're actually thanking the presenters and the speakers for their presentation. Feel free to ask your questions, please. Okay, Dr. Ayo Arowolo, are you there, please?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, please. Our distinguished chairman of NIQS Foundation actually asked a question in the comment section, and he said that stating that your data is always, that our data in Nigeria is always lagging behind, and that the data available is 7 years old. He asked, who should be in charge of data, particularly for housing and construction, and how accurate are the present data? Can you respond to that, please? Our honorable chairman is on to actually take your response. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you consider the costs of generating this data collection can be very expensive. Okay, I will say that government needs to invest in that area. We already have the institutions of government that is responsible for this. For instance, the Bureau of Statistics, the National Bureau of Statistics, should be able to give us information on this basic information, the number of houses available in Nigeria. If you just type the number of houses in the United States, you will see it. It is an open data. If you type housing deficits in the UK, you will see it. But for us, that information, always very debatable because even the foundation upon which we do the extrapolation is a big issue. The Nigerian census, for instance, we last had a census in which is that almost 20-something years ago that we last had a census. So even the 200 million population that we claim Nigeria has is debatable. And you see, and why are we not trying to get the right data? Because a lot of things go on in opacity. Once there is opacity, citizens can engage correctly. So sometimes I feel that the data is not available because government in this climate, we're still a bit careful on how citizens engage. We don't want citizens asking too much questions so the information in a way are technically not available, not because we can't afford it or we don't know the benefit of it. So that's from the government perspective. But the non-governmental organizations, the associations, this is where they need to play a role. If government is not doing much to provide this, what's our Institute for Architectures? What are they doing in providing this information? What is the NIQS doing to bridge that gap, either in advocating to the government to do more, or they are stepping in to get funding to fill in that gap? But it's a huge gap that is seen, either the government or the non-governmental bodies will need to fill in that space so that citizens can properly engage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo, for that response. We have another question from the comments section, and this is actually directed at you, Dr. Ayo. And someone actually said, an anonymous attendee, what courses are available for quantity surveyors that want to go into data analysis?
Oh, okay, quite a number. First, as a quantity surveyor, the closest data analytics that already fits into your profession is geoinformatics. Okay, geoinformatics allows you to be able to analyze data and produce spatial visualization of this data. Okay, so as a quantity surveyor, you're already conversant with working with maps and all of that. So the analytics of it is something we want to embrace. Two, visualization, like we've done in this webinar, is something you need to pick a skill in. Then data analysis, the statistical processing of data is also something we can also pay attention to and learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Ayo. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished participants, does anyone else have a question for the other?
Mr. Moderator, maybe I can come in quickly.
Yes, please. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor, please.
Yeah. Just taking us back. Thank you, Dr. Arolo, for an insightful lecture. I think data will continue to be the bane of our problem if data collection, if there is no institution that can be saddled with it properly. Maybe government should outsource it, and we could have accuracy in data in order to plan. Without data, you can't plan and effectively become developing country. That aside, I have this question for Professor Adogbo. In saying that equality, gender equality, what are you really referring to? I didn't quite get you then. I was my audio was playing on me, or I couldn't hear what you said about it. But are we saying that gender equality should be based on what men can do, the women should do it, or we are looking at those things that they can do that will enhance the totality of the environmental impact of their existence?
Well, thank you so much, sir. Well, what men can do, women can do even better is sentiment, really. But when we talk about gender equality, it is about equal access to opportunities, to rights, and to responsibilities. So it's to create enabling environment where women can easily, tap into giving their strengths, their skill sets, or whatever trainings that they've been able to receive. So if there are policies, for example, in an organization that will not allow a woman to come in, then those policies need to go. So earlier on, a participant asked a question, what about, particularly in the public sector in the northern part of Nigeria, where women are not allowed to take leadership roles or to head organizations? It's very rare to see women lead organizations. There's no law written that says women cannot lead. It's a mindset. It's, I think, to a very large extent, maybe cultural or social mindsets in the North. To have a woman heading an organization, not very popular. But gender equality principles would suggest that a woman should lead. Now, what do I do as a woman? My department, let me use my department as an example, quantity surveying in abuse area. The program started in 1971. And I was the first female lecturer to join in 2007. And I was the first HOD, that was 2009. So why did it take so long? Why did it take so long for a woman to come in as a lecturer in a program like this? First of all, the profession is not too popular. And then you come in as a woman, you are not just minority, if there's any word worse than that. So generally, a woman would be, in this part of the country, would be expected to be seen and not heard. Sorry, I'm digressing from the question, but bottom line is equal access, equal opportunity, enabling environment. But for the woman, what we do, we continue to work hard. We continue to excel at what we do. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much. My Honorable Chairman, due to time constraints, we have very little time left. Okay. Please, we would like to take the closing remark from our distinguished Director General, Dr. Celestina Nkechi Eke. She is the Director General, NIQS Foundation. Please, Ma, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Uzo. Oh, thank you, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to express my appreciation to the distinguished speakers, QS Prof. Adago, Dr. Arolo, and Engineer Franklin, for their excellent presentations, thought-provoking discussion, and valued contribution to our webinar on data visualization, a look at sustainable development goals using Excel. And Mr. Uzo for handling the event very well, for keeping things lively, under control, and reasonably on time. However, most importantly, I want to thank you all, the participants who attended the webinar via Zoom and YouTube Live. Without your input and discussion, the webinar would not have been the success it has been. I believe the webinar has been very effective in meeting its purpose, which is to provide information about sustainable development goals and help to strengthen the capacity to analyze and visualize data on achieving sustainable development goals. In addition, the session has highlighted equality and sustainable development, the woman in the development space, and achieving sustainable development goals in Nigeria through data analysis. Before ending my closing remarks, I would like to convey a special thanks to His Excellency, the President of NIQS, QS Michael Olayemi Shonubi, FNIQS, and to our Chairman, ever ready to support, the Chairman of NIQS Foundation, QS Joseph Lushegu Ajalekoko, FNIQS, PPNIQS, and distinguished NIQS Foundation board members, quantity surveyors in the development space, and participants who have been extremely cooperative in staying with us beyond the time allocated. Finally, my deepest thanks are of course, reserved for the NIQS Foundation Secretariat for their priceless contributions and for running a smooth webinar. Before I round up in thanking you, I want to please appeal to everyone here to register for our next coming webinar next week. That will be more interesting too. It will just be a continuation from what we have done to the next. It's titled, the theme is Unlocking the Power of Digital Education, Inclusion and Equality for Economic Development in Built Environments. I thank every one of you for listening and for attending. We appreciate you. Please do join us next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, our distinguished Director General, Dr. Eke. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo. Thank you so much, Professor Adogo. Thank you so much, Engineer Franklin. We thank you. We appreciate you. And our Honorable Chairman, thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate you. Thank you all for coming, dear participants. We appreciate each and every one of you. A post assessment will be sent to everyone. Kindly participate in that post assessment. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. At this juncture, we've come to our end of our free webinar on data analysis, data visualization, a look at sustainable development goals using Excel. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'll be back next week.
And the two systems.